I clapped too. That's the part I keep remembering. My hands moved on their own slow, polite measured, like the applause wasn't for the promotion I'd earned, handed instead to a 23-year-old kid who'd been here barely long enough to memorize the building layout. My name is Aaron Blake. I'm 44 years old. And I just watched Grayson, my manager's nephew, become the new regional operations director of Orion Meridian, a position I'd been quietly working toward for 5 years. Grayson stood near the front, grinning wide, probably still wearing the same cologne he used at his college graduation. Beside him, Raymond Geller, our department head, and his uncle beamed like a proud father. Fresh perspective, he said. Next-gen thinking. I kept my face still. I'd been promised that role. Twice. The second time was barely 6 months ago. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. And hit, like, if you've ever seen a moment like this. I stayed behind after the meeting, watched as handshakes circled the room. No one looked my way, but I wasn't surprised. People here learn quickly who they're allowed to celebrate and who they're allowed to ignore. Raymond caught my eye for half a second. Aaron's been instrumental in helping Grayson get up to speed. Like 5 years of 60-hour weeks were just a training module for the boss's nephew. I walked slowly back to my desk, opened my laptop, sat there for a long breath. Not angry, not sad, just ready. I opened a new document, not a report, not a client strategy brief. I started writing my resignation letter, and as I typed that first line, something in me locked into place. I wasn't just walking away from this job, I was starting something they couldn't see coming. I didn't plan to overhear anything. It was late past 8. Most of the office had cleared out except for me and a few night staff resetting equipment for the Friday vendor walkthrough. I was heading to the break room to microwave some leftovers when I heard voices from Raymond Geller's office. His door was cracked just enough for sound to leak through. You said Aaron was ready. That stopped me cold. Raymond's voice came next, calm, unhurried. He is, but Grayson's family, and he's got the degree. They want someone who fits the part. Then a pause, and this time just Raymond again. I mean, Aaron's reliable, smart, he gets things done. But let's be honest, he's not what a modern executive looks like. I didn't move. I just stood there holding my lunch like it weighed 100 pounds. 5 years of building that department from the ground up. 5 years of late nights, double shifts, vendor crises, personnel churn, and year-end saves. And now I was being summarized like a forgotten resume. A memory hit me from that first performance review with Raymond. Play the long game, Aaron. I see where you're headed. Apparently where I was headed was nowhere. I walked back to my desk, set my food down without heating it, and opened my laptop. I didn't rage. I didn't vent. I just sat there breathing. They'd made their move. Now I was going to make mine. I didn't say a word the next morning. I showed up at 8:02 a.m., same as always, logged in, responded to Grayson's Slack about onboarding metrics, re-reviewed the Q2 vendor dashboard. From the outside, it looked like I'd swallowed it. That's what Raymond Geller wanted. That's what Grayson needed. They thought I was the kind of man who'd rather be useful than visible. And for 5 years, I was. But now I wasn't working for them. I was working for the exit. The trick was to stay invisible a little longer. So I began documenting everything. Every duplicated request Grayson made. Every team lead he skipped over. Every Slack message I rewrote to save him from sounding like a clueless intern. I didn't correct him out loud anymore. I just kept a folder. I named it SOP Review, Q4 Candidate Feedback. Just plausible enough to go unnoticed. Just organized enough that no one could deny it later. That Friday, we had a client sync with Janet Morrison, our largest energy logistics partner in the region. She was direct, sharp, no patience for fluff. Grayson opened the call with a joke about how his uncle's trust in him gave him confidence to lead. Janet didn't even blink. She just turned to me and asked for the updated Phase 2 rollout schedule. I answered cleanly. No ego, no embellishment. After the call, Grayson gave me a thumbs up. Thanks for the save, Aaron. I smiled, just doing what I've always done. He didn't hear the weight behind it. The following week, I started drafting my transition doc. Not because anyone asked, but because I knew they'd ask soon. I left a few key pieces vague: the vendor escalation and process, the internal code for our fleet routing diagnostics, the side channel I used when 2 suppliers fought over the same corridor. Nothing malicious, just incomplete. Because here's the truth. I wasn't trying to sabotage Orion Meridian. I just stopped protecting it. And for a company like ours, where I was the buffer between technical chaos and client confidence, that made all the difference. By Wednesday, Raymond had called me twice, asking for clarity on a few things. I answered every question, carefully, factually, but never fully. At home that night, my daughter Sophia asked me, "Dad, are you mad at work?" I paused. "No," I said, just done pretending. Ever felt that shift when you're still there, but not really I was there? And I was watching it all fall apart quietly. The first time Grayson forgot to upload the vendor compliance sheet, I reminded him. The second time I didn't. By the third time, he'd missed the deadline by 36 hours, and I'd already CC'd the vendor directly using my old project alias to prevent a full stall out. He never thanked me, just messaged back "good catch," thought that was already handled. It wasn't a crisis, not yet. But that's the point. Cracks never start with explosions, they start with hairlines. Grayson was decent at rehearsed pitches and vague optimism, but under the surface, under real pressure, he missed things. Forgot names, replied in threads where context was critical, and he clearly hadn't read above the fold. The team noticed. Not openly, but they started copying me again, started booking me on vendor walkthroughs just in case, started asking for clarification on memos Grayson had already approved. I didn't correct any of them, I just let it happen. One Tuesday morning, I watched him pull up the wrong version of the P&L tracking dashboard during a finance sync with Janet Morrison's team. It wasn't a disaster, just outdated numbers, but Janet froze mid-sentence. "Is this from the March forecast file?" she asked flatly. Grayson blinked. It should be." "Yes." She didn't correct him, just looked to me. I nodded once. After the call, he laughed it off, said I gotta be better with version control. I didn't respond. Because what was I supposed to say? That the March forecast hadn't existed since April, that it was labeled obsolete in the file name itself. He didn't see the problem. He didn't even know there was a fire, just that someone else kept putting it out. And I realized that was the revenge. Not taking credit, not calling him out, just stepping away, quietly, and letting gravity do the rest. That Thursday, I found a sticky note on my desk. Just 4 words. "Will this hurt us?" No name, no signature. Just my desk late afternoon, and a quiet acknowledgement that someone in the team saw what was happening and didn't know whose side to be on anymore. That night, I sat in the parking lot 10 minutes longer than usual. I wasn't angry, I wasn't smug. I was just tired. Ever watch someone inherit your work and treat it like a toy? Now imagine you had the power to let it break all by itself. And in that moment, I made a decision. Next week, I'd make sure Raymond Geller saw it too. Monday started like any other. I walked into the Orion Meridian Logistics Center at 7:42 a.m., coffee still too hot to sip, and found the ops dashboard already flashing red. Grayson had marked the Morrison shipment as complete on Friday, which would have been great if the delivery hadn't been due this morning and still sitting in our Tucson holding yard. I stared at the screen. There it was, shipment ID 34877X, scheduled for Monday delivery, last scan, origin dock. I checked the vendor notes, no driver assigned, no dispatch confirmation. Grayson had skipped the final step and marked it resolved, just clicked a checkbox, probably to free up his weekend. And this wasn't some throwaway parcel. This was a $10,000 order of torque-regulated hydraulic valves for Janet Morrison's assembly line, which meant I checked her time window, 8:00 a.m. delivery deadline. I glanced at the clock, 7:44. Grayson wasn't even in yet. I opened Teams, clicked on the Morrison West chat log, and saw Janet's message had come in 10 minutes earlier. "Aaron, your ops center shows the delivery is confirmed, but we've got nothing at our bay doors. Is this a delay or something worse?" She'd CC'd her procurement chief and regional finance lead. No emoji, no hey, just blunt confusion. And then 1 minute later, "We have to start installation today. If we miss this window, we lose 36 hours of production and risk penalty charges from 3 clients. I took a breath, not panic, not anger, just that calm kind of stillness that tells you this moment matters. At 7:58, I heard Raymond's voice outside my cubicle. "Where's the Geller kid? He was supposed to present the Q3 forecast updates this morning." Grayson showed up 3 minutes later, hair-wet tie in his pocket, fumbling with his access badge. Raymond was standing by the ops dashboard. "Grayson," he barked. "This red line is that our Morrison West shipment." Grayson froze. I marked that resolved. "Yeah," I said. "I saw that." He turned to me, sheepish. "You said it was prepped." I said it was queued for dispatch. That means ready to go, not sent. Right. But I looked at him. Not angry, just tired. You thought clicking resolved would make the truck appear? Raymond stepped closer, squinting at the logs. This order's flagged as delivered in the system, but there's no carrier record. Nope, I said, because there was no carrier assigned. He blinked. So we reported a delivery that never happened. And Morrison's entire line is down today because of it. There was silence. Heavy, uncomfortable silence. Grayson's face turned a shade paler. Raymond turned to me. Can we reroute? I've already called Southwest Freight. Best case we get it there by 4 p.m. Worst case they miss the window and invoke the SLA clause. Raymond muttered something under his breath. Then without turning, he asked, how long have you known this wasn't going to work? 10 minutes before you walked in. He nodded, lips tight. I watched him process it. Not explode, not defend. Just stew in it. Because the worst part wasn't the mistake. It was that he knew in that moment Grayson didn't know what he was doing. He just didn't want to say it out loud. I didn't press. I didn't gloat. I just forwarded Janet the revised ETA, CC'd our legal team on the SLA clause exposure, and logged everything into our client impact register. And as I typed out the incident report, something shifted. Not rage, not revenge. Just clarity. This wasn't sabotage. It wasn't even personal anymore. It was a system unraveling under the weight of its own favoritism. A 23-year-old kid got handed the keys to a division he didn't understand. And the engine was sputtering. Somewhere between the second call with Janet and Raymond's hushed cursing in the corridor, I remembered something my daughter once said. Dad, just because someone gets ahead faster doesn't mean they'll stay ahead. Maybe she was right. Before I dive deeper, take a second and comment where you're listening from and tap, like if this reminds you of anything you've lived through. It helps the story find the right people. By noon, the shipment was on the road. By 3:00 p.m., Morrison's team had confirmed arrival. But that didn't stop the email that came in at 5:46 p.m. Janet Morrison has requested a review of current service contract terms and escalation procedures. Translation. They were preparing to move their account. And this time, I didn't try to stop it. Raymond didn't call me in, didn't ask for clarification. He just walked past my desk, jaw set, hand clutching his coffee like it was the only stable thing left. I watched him go. I didn't smile, I didn't smirk, but I did wonder, what happens when your biggest client walks because of the person you promoted? And what happens when the only one who could have stopped it already turned in his notice? The email came in at 9:12 a.m. Subject delivery, discrepancy report, internal review. From complianceopsorientmeridian.com. To Grayson Geller, Raymond Geller, Aaron Blake. Body. Following Monday's missed SLA for client Morrison West, we've initiated a limited internal review per Clause 8.2 of the Client Risk Mitigation Agreement. Please respond with your team's documented chain of custody and delivery validation within 24 hours. Include all comms and change logs. I read it twice. Then once more slower. There was no greeting, no thanks, just cold policy language and a ticking clock. And it didn't just go to Grayson, it went to me, to Raymond, which meant they wanted visibility across leadership and they didn't trust one source. Grayson replied 3 hours later with a vague 2-line summary, a screenshot of the dashboard, and the words, as confirmed shipment marked complete in system, logs unavailable due to back-end sync delay. I stared at it. That's like saying you don't know where your car is because the map app hasn't loaded. Raymond didn't reply. Instead, at 1:27 p.m., he walked by my desk, dropped a printed copy of the SLA breach notice on the corner, and said, "What else are we about to find, Aaron?" That was the first time in 5 years he asked me a question like that. Not as a subordinate. As a peer, I didn't answer. Not out of pride, but because I knew what was coming. When systems start auditing themselves, things surface. Forgotten chat threads, timestamp mismatches, version histories, Slack approvals given too quickly, vendor pings left unread. And sometimes, you don't need to say a word. You just let the logs speak. I opened the main system dashboard and pulled the shipment trace log. Then I pulled the vendor call history. Then the client escalation tag, Janet Morrison, triggered Monday morning. Each one told the same story, no driver, no dispatch, no override. Just a completed box Grayson checked without verification. Then I remembered something else. Back in February, we'd had a smaller hiccup with a shipment for Lenwell Aerospace. Same thing that Grayson said it was minor. I covered it then, reassigned the dispatch, and never escalated it. I searched that incident ID, found it. Shipment ID 22493A, manually overridden on Feb 12. By Aaron Blake. Initial error, same incomplete dispatch pattern, flagged but never reviewed. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't the first time. Just the first time I didn't fix it. You ever feel the sting of regret? Not because you were wrong, but because you had once been so right and it enabled the wrong people. I sat there staring at that override record for a long time. My name was on it, proof that I'd once shielded Grayson, proof that I knew months ago. The difference was, back then I still believed the system could be nudged into doing the right thing. Now I was just letting it follow its own gravity. At 3:05 p.m., my badge didn't work on the east stairwell. At 3:08, the Slack channel, which client escalations, removed my edit permission. Subtle, quiet, but clear. They weren't freezing me out. They were closing the circle. Then at 4:30, I got a ping from someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Natalie Singh, Associate Counsel, Internal Risk Review. Hi, Aaron. Can you confirm whether the attached escalation log was modified post-delivery breach? Your name appears in the version trail. Want to make sure we're working off clean data. Attached was a PDF, highlighted yellow. And there it was again. Modified by A. Blake timestamp. Feb. 12/3/14 p.m. Note. Urgent override to resolve dispatch flag before deadline. I stared at it. That wasn't sabotage. That was me doing my job. Covering, fixing, believing. But in this audit context, it looked like collusion. I typed, "Hi, Natalie confirmed. I authorized override as a one-time resolution due to a procedural gap. I flagged the training gap at the time, but wasn't looped into further remediation. Let me know what else you need." I paused before hitting send, then added, "And I appreciate the transparency, and I trust you'll follow the trail." She replied in 2 words, "Always do." That night I stayed late, not to fix anything, just to watch. Raymond didn't leave until almost 8. He passed by my desk, stopped, then turned around. "I need you in the meeting tomorrow," he said. Thought I was out of the loop. "You were," he said. "Now you're not." And just like that, the game changed again. You ever wonder what happens when the boss who chose his nephew starts doubting him? Tomorrow I'd find out. The conference room was already half full when I walked in. Raymond was at the head of the table. Ty loosened a legal pad in front of him, but no pen. That was new. Grayson sat 3 seats down, shoulders stiff, face pale. He hadn't shaved. Or maybe he had badly. Either way, he didn't look like the golden boy anymore. I took my seat across from the glass wall. Sunlight cut in from the atrium outside, catching the corner of the Orion Meridian crest, etched into the wall. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Raymond cleared his throat. No speech. Just this. I've reviewed the logs, the override chain, the vendor call records, and Janet's email. His voice wasn't angry. It was something worse. Controlled. He turned to Grayson. "Is there anything else I should know?" Grayson blinked. "It wasn't sabotage. I trusted the system readout. It was green. You've said yourself the back end's glitchy sometimes." That was his defense. Back end glitchy. I kept my eyes on the table. Raymond didn't raise his voice. "You checked complete on a shipment that was never dispatched, then ignored 2 client escalation flags. That's not a back-end problem, Grayson. That's negligence." A quiet breath escaped the room, like no one had realized they were holding it. Then Grayson turned to me. "You trained me. You never said I had to manually confirm every shipment tag." And there it was. Not denial. Deflection. Like always. I looked up calmly. "You were told. February 12th, Lenwell Aerospace. Same mistake. I covered it then. Sent you the correction note in Slack and flagged the dispatch procedure update. You left it unread." Raymond turned slowly. "Is that true?" Grayson didn't answer. He didn't have to. Raymond reached into his folder and slid something across the table. It was a printed Slack log, highlighted in yellow. Dispatch must be confirmed manually until V3.2 patch. Timestamped. My name, unread. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was administrative. That's what people forget about these moments. They don't explode. They collapse. Grayson's voice broke the quiet. "So, what, I'm fired now? Over a missed shipment?" Raymond didn't even look at him. "You're suspended, pending internal review." Then he turned to me. "Aaron, can you cover Morrison West through next week?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I was hesitant, but because something shifted in me in that moment. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I wasn't vindicated. I was just done pretending that people like Raymond didn't know exactly who they were protecting until it cost them. I stood, happy to assist, temporarily. I turned to leave. As I reached the door, I paused hand on the handle. Just for the record, what you protect is what defines your legacy. Then I left. That night, I got a text from Janet Morrison. Glad you're back. Let me know when you're ready to talk about the future. The future, not Orion's. Mine. And suddenly the revenge didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like release. But that was only the start. Because what no one in that room realized was this. I hadn't resigned yet, and I hadn't even opened the folder Diana Keller sent me. I just wanted to see how much more of this they'd break before I walked. By Monday, the tone had changed. Not officially, no memos, no formal announcements, but people started watching each other more carefully. Slack went quieter. Meetings got shorter. Everyone started wearing that brittle expression you see when a team senses someone upstairs is bleeding out, and they don't want to be near the mess when it spills. I passed Raymond in the hallway outside logistics. He gave me a curt nod, then looked away before I could respond. That had never happened before, not in 5 years. 2 hours later, I got a calendar invite from his assistant. Subject, client briefing request, Morrison West, follow-up. No context, just a timestamp. I clicked accept. At 2:15, I walked into the small ops conference room, just me a screen and Janet Morrison on video. Her tone was all business, but there was something in the way she opened with, "I appreciate you stepping in last week, Aaron." The transition was noticeable. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. She shared a brief update, nothing urgent. Then, just before ending the call, she added, "We're evaluating our vendor relationships this quarter. If anything changes on your end, I'd want to know." Then she logged off. Just like that, she'd handed me a loaded question. And I hadn't even asked. I sat there for a moment, fingers still hovering above the keyboard. I didn't send a follow-up. I didn't alert Raymond. I just closed the laptop and sat back. That was the moment I realized I didn't need to sabotage anything. The structure was already hollow. I just needed to stop holding it up. 2 days later, IT pinged me for a request. Some access logs from Q1 had gone missing from the archive. I checked. They hadn't gone missing. They'd been filtered by a system rule I'd personally flagged as non-compliant last December. The rule still hadn't been removed. I sent back a polite response. Suggest review of policy 6.4b, auto retention exception filters. Could present risk exposure during audit. Flagged in the prior compliance check. No accusations, just a light tap. Like flicking the side of a water glass and letting the ripples spread. That night, I sat on the balcony with Sophia, my daughter, eating takeout out of the container. She asked me, "Are you going back to the office tomorrow?" I nodded. But in my head, I wasn't going back. I was watching it all from the outside now, like someone who used to live in the house but stopped checking the mail. I thought about the first time I met Raymond, his voice full of charm telling me, "We don't do shortcuts here, Aaron. We build to last." And maybe he believed that, back then. But somewhere along the way, shortcuts started getting names. Grayson, promotion, pressure, and the foundation, well, you can't patch over rot with confidence. That Thursday, I found an envelope slid under my keyboard when I returned from lunch. No label. Inside was a printout, a Slack thread from Grayson's team. "Who's handling the vendor?" Rollback Janet's asking again. I thought it was still Aaron. He's not copied anymore. Wait, who is lead on this? No one had signed it, but someone had made sure I saw it. It was starting. Not revenge, not sabotage, just gravity. And when Diana Keller's email finally arrived at 6:08 p.m. with the subject line, "One question. Confidential." I didn't open it right away. I just stared at the screen for a long moment, then leaned back and let the silence stretch. Because I knew that building doesn't have much longer to stand. And I'm not walking away. I'm walking into something better. But before that, I want to see how far it falls. By Tuesday, something shifted. I wasn't checking in with Janet anymore. She was updating me. The tone of her emails had changed. No more polite deference or project updates. Just direct bullet points and one subject line that said everything. "We're pulling Grayson." Raymond responded within 3 hours. Then 6 follow-ups. Then a Slack message Janet never replied to. That silence wasn't a gap. It was a signal, a quiet no. But it didn't stop there. Grayson had approved a patch deployment without internal staging, a process I'd hard-coded to require dual sign-off for anything touching the telemetry layer. It triggered a compliance alert. Not a catastrophic one, but just loud enough for our internal audit team to flag it as a potential control failure. And the moment that word hit the audit log, it also hit the boardroom. That's the thing about real power. It doesn't roar. It appears in the form of a calendar invite. Raymond scheduled an urgent governance sync. I wasn't in it, of course. But the invite title told me enough. Remediation paths plus external reassurance. I'd written that phrase once 2 years ago when I built the very risk language they were now being reviewed against. I didn't sabotage anything. I just let my documentation breathe. By Wednesday night, Grayson was locked out of 2 internal systems. By Thursday, I got a call from someone in finance off the record. They wanted clarification on legacy patch workflows. I told them I'd left full notes behind and they were welcome to review the SOP library. The silence that followed lasted 10 seconds. And it wasn't a confused silence. It was reverent. Friday morning, Diana Keller replied to my thank you email with just 4 words. Told you they'd notice. That's when it hit me. I didn't want to destroy Raymond. I just wanted to correct the record. That line I'd carried around for months, 5 years of perfect performance, wasn't about ambition. It was about self-respect. I wanted it seen, not dismissed, not transferred, seen. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away slow enough for them to see what they've lost. And now they were seeing it on Slack, in dashboards, in client feedback, in audit summaries. Funny thing is, I didn't even call Diana yet, because the real leverage was never the revenge. It was the choice. Before I continue, take a moment to share this video. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought they could erase your work, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Let's just say the second revenge was about to begin. Monday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said to pick it up. Aaron, it's Diana. Her tone wasn't formal, not triumphant, just steady. We'd like to bring you in, not as a contractor, not as an advisor, as EVP, client strategy and systems. You'll have full autonomy. I'll clear the board. I didn't speak right away. I was standing in my kitchen half-dressed, staring at the same old Orion Meridian mug I'd taken home the day I cleared my desk. I'd never thrown it out, just stuck it behind the blender. That mug used to mean loyalty. Now it meant memory, a reminder of what I'd built and what they wasted. I told Diana I'd think about it. She didn't try to sell me, didn't rush, just said, "We've seen what you did with Grace. That's rare." Then she added, "And Raymond knows." That made me pause. How? We didn't tell him, but he knows. Grayson's out. Janet went to the board, and finance flagged 5 operational bottlenecks, all traced to your absence. I sat down, not because I was shocked, but because I suddenly felt the weight of 5 years lift. Not ripped off like a bandage, lifted, like someone finally acknowledged the bruise underneath. Later that afternoon, I walked to the park with Sophia. She asked why I looked different. Lighter, she said. I didn't explain. I just watched her chase pigeons near the bench where I used to take conference calls. The same bench where I once fought to keep a deal alive while Raymond stalled my promotion behind closed doors. Now those doors didn't matter. Grayson had gone quiet on social media. Raymond hadn't updated his LinkedIn in weeks. People notice those things. Failure in our world isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the absence of momentum. That's when I realized this wasn't about revenge. It was about correction. Setting the record straight in workflows and clients and memory. And Diana, she wasn't offering me a job. She was offering me my name back. The name they tried to replace. But I hadn't said yes yet, because the final move wasn't hers. It was mine. What would you have done? Would you take the role, or walk away just to prove you didn't need it? Because what I did next, it surprised even me. I didn't attend the final board meeting. By then, my name had already done the work. Diana Keller had made her decision. HR had completed the internal investigation. Janet Morrison had given her statement, calmly, precisely backed by 2 signed letters from vendors Orion had alienated since I left. And Grayson. He was escorted out just after lunch. No confrontation, no drama. Just a quiet walk through the glass lobby, flanked by security, his badge already deactivated. I heard he didn't speak a word, just looked confused like the rules of the game had suddenly changed. They hadn't. He'd simply never understood them. Raymond Geller retired the next day. Technically. The official language was stepping down to pursue personal interests. Unofficially, his name was flagged in 4 policy reviews and 1 pending compliance audit. Diana didn't push the knife in. She just stopped protecting him. The final report was already archived in the system, but I did stop by that Thursday around 6:15 p.m. The lights in the East Wing were already dimmed. The floor was quiet. I walked the same path I used to take when I stayed late to coach junior analysts or tweak timelines after the client changed specs again. I paused in front of the break room, the same one where I had once overheard Grayson bragging that Uncle Ray said it was time to put fresh faces up front. Inside, I left a single thing on the table, a clean Orion Meridian mug. Not chipped, not cracked, just empty. A gesture, not a statement. A few minutes later, I was driving back across the bridge, my daughter's voice on the Bluetooth, asking what I wanted for dinner. I told her anything was fine, then changed my mind and said pizza. The kind she likes with too much cheese and pineapple, I still pretend to hate. That night, I sat on the patio of my new apartment, smaller, quieter, farther from the skyline. I had my notes open. One tab showed Silverlinks' upcoming RFP slate. Another held a thank you note from a former intern at Orion who now worked at Deloitte. She said she remembered how I used to stay late to help her prep for client calls when everyone else had already left. Funny, the things people carry forward. There's no celebration, no parade, just a small, clean silence where something used to sting, and now it doesn't. Before I go further, tell me something. Have you ever walked away from a place that owed you more than it ever gave back? And when you did the silence feel like revenge? Or peace? The last time I heard Raymond Geller's voice, it was on a voicemail I never returned. He sounded tired, not angry, just worn out. Like a man who finally realized he'd bet his legacy on the wrong bloodline. I still remember the way he used to walk into morning briefings like a field general. That edge was gone. I deleted the message. By then, Grayson had resigned. Officially, it was to pursue new opportunities. Unofficially, after the board's audit revealed 3 major procurement violations tied to his signature, there weren't many options left to pursue. The part that stayed with me, though? They never said my name. Not once in the statement, not once in the coverage. Just silence. Like erasing me might soften the collapse. But Diana Keller knew. So did Janet Morrison. So did every vendor rep who'd quietly followed my lead when I left Orion Meridian. I didn't need my name in headlines. I just needed it back in the right rooms. A week ago, I found that old coffee mug again, the one Sophia made in 2nd grade, the one I packed into a box the morning they promoted Grayson. It had a tiny crack now running right through the painted heart. I still drink from it, because that crack, that's the part that makes it mine. Raymond lost more than a company. He lost the trust that built it. That's the thing men like him never understand. Loyalty isn't inherited, it's earned. And once it's gone, no bloodline can buy it back. Sophia asked me recently, "Are you happy now?" I told her the truth. I'm at peace. Because revenge wasn't the goal. Recognition was. Not applause, not power. Just that quiet, steady kind that shows up in boardrooms when your name carries weight. When people don't introduce you, they defer to you. I didn't want them ruined. I wanted them accountable. That was always the difference between us. So, here I am, sitting in a quiet office overlooking a project I helped design from scratch. My own team, my own terms, no politics, no surprises. Just impact. Ever had to rebuild your name from the rubble someone else left behind? Drop a comment. I'd like to hear your story. And if this one meant something to you, like subscribe and stay tuned. There are more stories where this came from. And sometimes I wonder, what if I'd just accepted it? What if I'd stayed? What would Sophia have seen in me then?